Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to two-way frequency tables. We are looking at people who have cell phones and people who don't have cell phones. We're looking at people who have MP3 players, which, are iPods, and people who don't have iPods. So this, going up and down right here, this is called a column. And in this column, our total here is going to be the number of people who have an MP3 player. So we're doing 57 plus 13, and we get 70 people total who have an MP3 player. Okay, now let's look when we go this way. This is called a row, and these are all the people who have a cell phone. So we know that and this total right here shows us that there are 78 people with a cell phone. Well, let's see how many of the people who have a cell phone don't have an MP3 player. So in order to do that, we need to do 78 minus 57, 78 minus 57, and we get 21 people. Let's see, 21. I'm just gonna, okay. So now we have all of this wonderful information. I'm gonna go back and say, well, how many people don't have an MP3 player at all? So for that, we're gonna do 21 plus 9, which is going to be 30. So that means we have 30 people with no MP3 player. It doesn't matter if they have a cell phone or not. We know that they don't have an MP3 player. Now let's find out how many people don't have a cell phone. So in order to do this, we're going to go across the row, 13 plus 9, which is going to give us, let's see, 9, 10, 11, 10, 11, 12. So that's going to be 22. Okay, just want you to see that you can add that way. And then what we're going to need to do is add up this column, this totals column, to get our grand total. So 78 plus 22. I'm going to go off my graph a little bit, is going to be 100. Okay, so what that 100 means for us in general is that we've talked to 100 different people. Okay, so now let's see. We have 57 people. They have a cell phone and they have iPod. That's just what I'm going to call it. You guys probably aren't even sure what an MP3 file is, so this is where we're going to go with that one. Now if we said, okay, well, let's look at this. Well, we have 13 people, okay, which is right here. They have no cell phone, but they do have, so no cell phone, and they have an iPod. Okay, 21 people have a cell phone, and then no iPod. And then right here we have 9 people who have neither. They have no cell phone, and they have no iPod. I'm guessing these are probably the little kids. We'll see. Okay, so this is how we read this. So I'm going to erase that because we still need the table, but I want to show you guys how this works. Let's see if I can actually just move this. Cool. Okay, now when we look at our columns though, we know that there are 70 people total who have an iPod. It doesn't matter. This is just 70 people total who have an iPod. We don't care if they have a cell phone or no cell phone. Okay? And our other column is no iPod, so we have a total of 30 people with no iPod. And again, of these 30, we don't care if they have a cell phone or not, or a cell phone. Okay? Now let's look at the row. Going across, we have a total right here of 78 people with cell phones. 78 people have a cell phone. And from these people, They might have MP3 players, they might have iPods. We don't know, we don't really care. We just want to know how many people. Do you have a cell phone? Okay, raise your hand. So we're doing it that way. And then we're going to have, looking at that row again, we have 22 people with no cell phone. They might have an MP3 player or an iPod, they might not. We don't know, we don't really care because we already looked at that. What we care about is that total to find out, do you have an iPod? Cool. Do you not have an iPod? Okay. Do you have a cell phone? Cool. Do you not have a cell phone? Okay. We don't really care either way. And this is what those totals mean. This is how these frequency tables work. Okay. And with this, we are going to make ratios. So I'm going to pause this. I will be right back with our whole spreadsheet so we can see exactly what that's going to look like. Okay, so now that I have my wonderful little table all cleaned up, what we can look at is we're going to actually look at the ratios. Remember, ratios are just fractions, it's just a fancier word. And remember, all of our totals, those are just our frequencies. They are our marginal frequencies. They are our cumulative frequencies. So when we're looking at that, we know that if we say, out of all the people who have iPods or MP3 players, 57 of them have cell phones. So we would be 57 out of 70. And these are the people who, our first thing is have an iPod. I'm just going to call them iPods. And a cell phone. That's one of the key things. So that first phrasing there is what tells us what our ratio is going to look like. Okay, so another example would be, and so in this particular case, we happen to use a column. Another example would be, okay, out of the people who don't have cell phones. So how many people don't have a cell phone? Well, that's going to be 22 total. Out of the people who do not have a cell phone, 9 do not have an MP3 player or an iPod. So this is we start with the no cell phone people, and that's that denominator, and no iPod. Okay? By the way, just an FYI, some of this data might have been taken back in the 90s, before most of you were born. So what else could we do? Because this is how this works. We can say, well, out of the people who don't have a cell phone, out of the people who don't have an MP3 player, so no iPod, okay, and they have no cell phone. I know that looks like it's very similar to one of the things we've done before, but it's going to be a little bit different. I'll show you why. Let's look at our ratio. So no iPod. So look at the people because that's the first thing. Let me highlight this for us. This key part, this first phrasing, is that ding, 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 look at me part. Because we are talking about the people who don't have an iPod, out of those who don't have an iPod. So how many people do not have iPods? 30 of them. Now, of them, how many do not have a cell phone? That would be 21. Okay, so we're just making these ratios and we're going to turn them into percents. I'm not too worried because you guys all know that to find a percent, you just take your numerator, divide it by your denominator, and multiply it by 100 or move your decimal. Okay, so this is how we're just starting to read them. Come back for the next one and we're going to talk about story problems with frequency tables. Ones where it's not just all filled in like this.